Hey, Kristy Rice here, author of Painterly Days, the watercoloring books for adults. I started this pattern from a Painterly Days pattern book on Periscope the other day, so just continuing here, adding washes. This pattern was inspired by peacock feathers. So what I'm doing here is adding clean water from my brush to the page and then dropping in color in certain areas, letting it bleed out a bit, float together. You can remove color by using a dry brush, dry clean brush, back on the page, scooping up some water or color, and then blotting that on your paper towel. That works beautifully. Again, I'm using Daniel Smith watercolors. A lot of opera pink here, a lot of moon glow. And I'm just continuing these washes along the top half of this pattern. Some areas I'm applying more pigment than others just because it adds visual interest. And this is a technique that allows you in the beginning to be super free and bold with the way that you lay down color. You don't always have to apply your watercolor in small areas first, but you certainly can. This technique is great if you're one that really likes to see progress quickly. You can lay down washes of color all over the page fairly quickly, but make sure to let them dry before you go back in and work in detail. If you go back in when the page is wet and you want detail, you're not going to get detail. Just to show you a close-up here of how beautifully this paper does. Look at all those explosions and washes and colors mingling together. I love it. So pretty. That's the characteristic of watercolor that I think I'm most in love with. And you know, when you're just starting out with watercolor, I think that's what fascinates people the most, are those little explosions and the way that the watercolor dries on the edges. It's just magical, really. And so you want to get comfortable, for those perfectionists out there, you want to get comfortable with the freedom and letting your watercolor kind of do its thing. You can see in the bottom left corner there's a spot that just went completely out of the lines. You have to be okay with those little moments because that's what gives the watercolor such character. So now I've gone back in with some Japanese watercolor here in a red just to add some really sharp detail. My page is completely dry, and I'm just adding some stark contrast in a bold, thicker, less opaque paint against all these beautiful sheer washes. Start to work in some of the negative space with a beautiful teal. I'm starting wet, clean brush on the page, and then floating in that color. There I go again with the wet, clean water on the page, floating in the color, cleaning my brush again, and then moving that color around with some clean water on the page. And here I just decided to add some gold. Guys, I'm going to do another tutorial using this beautiful gold watercolor. I'm really excited about it, but just to give you a little teaser,